Welcome to this Security in Focus Scoop podcast, one of the Gallagher Security series of Security in Focus webinars, YouTube videos and podcasts, where we aim to inform and empower our installers and customer communities to achieve the best security solutions to protect what matters most. My name is Steve Bell, CTO at Gallagher Security, and in this bi-monthly Security Scoop podcast series, I'll be talking to guests about significant updates in security technology or unique solutions to protect people. This Scoop podcast is a case study for how 3 different schools in 3 different countries have implemented Gallagher systems to manage their security, and with that, the safety of students and staff. Waipawa School in rural New Zealand has 300 students and recently installed the Gallagher SMB cloud-hosted security system to replace an old alarm system. The principal, Paul Jamieson, is excited about how well it is working for them, with an interesting revelation about the operational costs of the new system, and he would love to have funds to extend to door control. I talked to George Dunleavy, who was Strategic Security Manager for South Australian schools, while they did a big technology upgrade program. They installed a single Gallagher command centre system in the cloud to oversee all the public schools in the state. We hear about how the security needs have changed with the evolution happening in education. They are working towards keyless schools and have found some great benefits of a centralised server. The third case study is for Metcalfe County in the state of Kentucky in the USA. Chris Hoffman was a school safety administrator for the county and has built an evolving security system around Gallagher Command Centre. He talks about the importance of a great 3-way relationship with his installer, Inspire Technologies, and the Gallagher team, where they decided to install the Command Centre system and integrated milestone video system early and extend the system over several years to fully manage access and video as finances allowed. Hear about how they have implemented the Halo Smart Sensor to further enhance the safety they can provide and also manage the vaping problems increasingly experienced by schools around the world. I was also pleasantly surprised to hear about the degree that the Kentucky state government have legislated to require a minimum safety standard for schools. So let's get into it. First, let's hear from Paul at Waipawa School in New Zealand.
My name's Paul Jamieson and principal of Waipawa School. Waipawa's in Hawke's Bay, so 30 minutes south of Hastings, and we have 310 children. Just a one school town, so a small town, about 2,000, and we're the only school. I've been here 5 years now. That's Waipawa. It's a great little school, and we've got about 32 people that work here.
Recently you went ahead and upgraded your security system to a Gallagher SMB security system. What did you have for security on site at school prior to that?
Yeah, we had the old keypads. So we had 3 keypads scattered throughout the school, and the sensors, I think they must have been quite old. And you ask what everyone's code is, they're pretty much the same. And then being a one-town school, people use our facilities like the hall, or when you'd go to organise a key for them to get in, they all knew what the code was. Look, it wasn't that great. It would go off randomly, like they do sometimes. There'd be a call-out fee. It was really hard to put new people on. The company we used to go with couldn't do it remotely. They'd have to drive down, do their thing off again. I'd hate to think how many people actually had their own code, probably over 80, and then a lot of other people just knew a number.
Pretty much the whole community knew how to disable your alarms.
I'd say so. And they were just a nuisance having 3 keypads around the place. It's just the old chestnut. You come in the weekend and you see a car there, so you just think the alarm's off, but it's not off. You walk into a building and it goes off, and all that sort of stuff was just annoying, but we had to do something. So
you looked around and it sounds like you found a new supplier.
When you talk to other schools, no one was particularly happy with their security company. And then Richard from Advanced Security, the new boys on the block in Hawke's Bay, and did a bit of digging and hopped onto that, and away we went. He gave us a couple of options. One was to stick with the old keypad and just redo the sensors, or one was the Gallagher SMB.
So what was the thing that made you decide to change out to the SMB product?
Oh, just easy. but also we're in control. So that was the big difference. We've just had a staff member leave last Friday, so I've deleted him from the alarm setup. So I've got a new one starting, so I've just set them up. Literally 2 minutes, not even that, to do both of those things. It's just so easy, Steve. That makes the difference. I'm not relying on trying to get hold of a technician. To tell you the truth, I've had just about nothing to do with advanced security since they put the system in. They come down and do a once or twice a year maintenance of the sensors around the place. I have not had an issue to ring them for anything. One of the things in a school that you just want to work well and not have to worry about, because we've got too much going on. So when you're worried about your security system, you're taking your eyes off what your real job is.
Yeah, as you say, it's really easy for you to maintain it and add and remove people and see what's going on. And I guess you see the alarms come to your phone and you can know about them first.
Yeah, they go to my caretaker or me. And actually, since we've had it, we've had very few. And so it's just all round been a really good move. And it's actually worked out cheaper than it was too. It's better on all fronts.
Well, that's a pretty good outcome too, because the Gallagher SMB is a subscription model, but good to hear that it's not costing you any more.
No, it certainly isn't. So really happy staff. Our staff enjoy it too, all on their phones. And that problem I mentioned before, when you turn up to school and you're not sure if the alarm's off because you see a couple of staff cars, well, it's so easy to check on your phone if it's armed or disarmed. It's simple. You don't need to go to the 2 or 3 points in the school to go to the keypad. You can do it in the car park, or you can do it as you're walking in. They love it. Even the people that were worried about the change going to an app, that can throw some people. But no, it's fantastic.
So sometimes we hear that people don't want to put an app on their own phone, but your staff haven't had a problem with that?
Haven't had a problem whatsoever. So there were a few grumbles like that. Once they could see how easy it is, it's much better than the keypad, 100 times better. So pleased to have told a few schools. Yeah, it'd be interesting. Hopefully more of them do it, because it's so much better.
So you mentioned that you have community coming into the school regularly and using some of the facilities. How does that work with the community? Have you enrolled any of them in there?
Just myself or the caretaker will just know what time they're coming in and work it out that way rather than making them as a guest or anything like that. But I know we can do that. Now, I feel a lot better about it all. I feel a lot more secure, and I was thinking I haven't got a bad word about it, because I haven't had to ring Richard or Terry or the guys at Advanced Security, because I haven't had any issues. The only issues I've had is with our Wi-Fi when it goes down, but that's hardly an issue, because you've just got to get closer to the Bluetooth for it to work.
Okay, so you recommend that pretty much any school will find the same sort of benefits you've got out of it, I guess?
Yeah, I think so. We kept it really simple here. Just we don't have different areas set up, so we just have the one area because it suits us. But I know when the guys put it in, there was scope to do a lot of things like that. So yeah, I just love to be able to do the door one next, but that might be a little way away. Get rid of the keys, and just have that's the next step. Maybe another 5 years.
Yeah. And look, there's a bit more hardware installation to put on a door, so it does cost you a wee bit, and I guess finding money on a school's budget is pretty challenging.
Yeah, but having to change a whole set of keys is not cheap either.
It was great talking to Paul and hear that they find our SMB system is easy to use, gives them the feeling that they're in control, and really exciting to hear that it has saved some operational costs compared to the old alarm system. So let's move on to the South Australian Schools case study with George Dunleavy, who has since joined the Gallagher team.
My name is George Dunleavy. I am the Technical Business Development Manager for South Australia Northern Territory for Gallagher Security, and prior to that I was the Strategic Security Manager for the Department of Education here in South Australia.
So George, in your role as Strategic Security Manager, can you tell us what were your and the South Australian Department of Education goals were for security at the schools?
Historically, schools and school security was based on asset protection, preventing break-ins after hours or vandalism, and there's a fair amount of money invested on installing high security fences around schools. Like most educational facilities, schools obviously have a lot of doors and a lot of keys. Certainly here in South Australia, schools have security alarm systems to protect assets after hours primarily, but also just provide some level of access and assistance for user groups and hirers. It all starts from a security perspective for schools to try and make them keyless. That was the goal achieved through the programs and what we're working with them now with Gallagher Security.
You mentioned that a lot of it was around alarms. So what sort of alarm systems were traditionally used in these schools?
So when I first started in education back in 2012, there was a high proliferation of just basic security alarm systems, literally often just using a single user code or alarm code for every staff member, primarily based around protecting the administration area or anywhere where they were storing high-value equipment like computers and the like. But really, security in schools had to evolve and should continue to evolve in line with the way that education is delivered and that educational outcomes are delivered. Of course, education is constantly changing in the way that it's delivered in a school environment. So, as an example, when you were at school, there was probably a computer room, and that's where every single computer in the school was stored. But with the advent of more mobile devices through either laptops or iPads or things of that ilk, and then that moved into bring your own device schemes in schools. So you're no longer having these rooms with high-value technical assets in them. So the things you're trying to achieve in terms of protecting school assets and school property starts to change with the way that schools and education is being delivered.
And you mentioned earlier the community use of the school's facilities. What challenges does that create?
There are certainly guaranteed to be scenarios where you're providing a key to a school that gives them access to more areas than they really should have in order to gain access to the area that they need. Getting those keys back is very difficult, and the copying of keys or the potential copying of keys is problematic.
Right, and I guess for schools that link to community and sharing of resources is pretty vital.
Absolutely. Schools, certainly public schools, are public facilities funded by the taxpayer. Those facilities should be available to the community for use, whether that's libraries or sports halls or music areas. It's just a case of working out how you can provide that access without increasing your security risks.
So in choosing a system, what were the key things that you and your team were looking for?
Aesthetics is inevitably a huge thing for schools. It's one of the reasons why high fencing, for example, in terms of solving graffiti and vandalism, was sometimes quite a polarising solution. Sticking an enormous fence around this beautiful school and this doesn't necessarily send the right signal to that local community. So the way a school looks, the way that it feels when you walk into the campus, the way that it feels when you walk into a building is hugely important to parents and to caregivers and to the community as a whole and to the people that work there. Ultimately, they need to be safe environments. We all want our kids to go to school and be safe. So it's about being able to provide a level of security that isn't hugely overt where possible and yet provides that same level of functionality. So aesthetics is huge for school.
The decision got made to install a Gallagher system. So maybe if you could give us a background of that.
There was a large capital works project happening to expand a number of our bigger high schools in South Australia and create new buildings and new learning spaces for those schools. A fairly progressive business manager was looking at installing electronic access control in that school, and my advice was sought in terms of what system would work best, but they'd already gone down the line of having an escutcheon-based system because they wanted to retrospectively install it in other parts of the school. And in terms of this particular school, it was a heritage-listed building in some parts, so that then restricted what could and couldn't happen in terms of installing hardwired access control, etc. So for that particular project, and for a number of projects that followed on from that, we selected an escutcheon-based access control platform that then meant they could use it in brand new constructions and in retrofits for the rest of the school. There wasn't really anything that existed in schools at the time that would have integrated with any of these escutcheon-based access control systems. It just didn't work. And then it really came down to opportunity. Adelaide Botanic High School, which opened in 2019 off the top of my head, was the first brand new school that had been constructed in South Australia for over 20 years. It was the first vertical high school in the whole of Australia and consisted of remodelling of an existing UniSA building that had been purchased by the government and then an adjoining tower to create sort of two towers with a connecting roofline. And honestly, the intent was to create a keyless school. So we looked at what security platform would best integrate with what we then had as the escutcheon-based platform of choice. And Gallagher was the only security system at the time that was a viable option for us to install as the main security platform that would then also allow us to have these escutcheon-based locks around the learning areas and the classrooms in the school, because, I say, aesthetically that was a huge thing for some people.
I understand you put in a central command centre server that was on the school or in somewhere else.
Adelaide Botanic High was the catalyst for what then turned into a central server mentality. It was actually driven by an IT decision. So our IT department in South Australia was looking at moving away from physical on-premises servers as far as was possible. There was an enormous IT project called Swift, from memory, to upgrade the quality of internet services to schools and in schools. A lot of things that we do, security and IT, is about educational outcomes. Staff should be able to go to school without having to worry about whether it was broken into overnight. Kids should be able to go into school without having to walk past broken windows and graffitied walls, and they should feel safe when they get there. So, and if in some way technology can assist in achieving that, then all the better. So, driven by what it appeared to be an intent to move away from physical on-premises servers, it opened up an opportunity for us to have a cloud-based server that could service multiple schools and would then have huge cost savings in terms of upgrading and deploying security systems across the asset portfolio for education.
And were there any other benefits of having that centralised server and management of it?
Ownership and supervision of the whole platform. Education across South Australia is an enormous beast in terms of the sheer volume of schools, the contractual arrangements for contractors who are entitled to work on schools, whether it's from a maintenance perspective or from a installation perspective. So you therefore have a scenario where lots of different companies inevitably are going to be installing security systems. And if they're all spread across the length and breadth of the state, how can you be sure that those systems have been installed to the same standard? So by having this central server architecture as the primary platform, it allows the security team to log in and have a look and monitor and ensure that things are being done in a consistent manner.
And did that mean that the individual schools themselves didn't have to have the same level of expertise, configure and administer their system?
That certainly was a driving factor. Keeping people up to date with knowledge and experience in using a platform is always a challenge. It's not uncommon for any platform to be installed at the request or intent of one person who then leaves that school. So you can see how over time things just degrade because there's no succession planning necessarily included, or people feel uncertain or unsure about how to use a system or a platform. So by having on-site staff supported by a higher level of expertise by centralised staff just gives you that sort of flexibility in deployment.
So were there any features of the system that actually made the life of teachers and staff much easier?
I'm going to touch on something that is broadly referred to as safe zones or lockdown areas. So the design of Adelaide Botanic, a security perspective, was deliberately designed so that you could either keep people in an area and provide them with a source of egress through the fire exit, or keep people out of an area and therefore provide a safe escape path for the people who've locked themselves in. So it then began to inform the way that buildings were expected to be designed and access points were expected to be designed. So there was always a thesis of, can I secure myself in this space and therefore escape very easily, or can I secure the problem, potentially a violent student or someone who's come onto site within that space, and then the only point of egress they have is to exit. Some of the features that Gallagher had in terms of the logic blocks or the lockdown process or the ability to make something happen when you badge a card at a particular point was a significant selling point for what the platform offered.
When we were talking prior to this recording, you mentioned that things like first card unlock was a great feature.
So it points back to the concept of the advantage of a keyless school. I candidly don't believe that you necessarily need to put a lock on every single classroom, for example. It depends on what the layout of that building or that area of the campus is. If you can just secure the entrance to a corridor that leads to 5 classrooms, well, you've probably saved a fair bit of time and effort and money in just securing that corridor space. Then you're making life easier for yourself in terms of cost-effective deployment of an access control or a security solution. So it's a huge resource ramification for someone to literally wander around an entire school campus unlocking doors. So what happens if that person is sick and can't unlock those doors? So using schedules to control when access control doors might be unlocked and available for free access is obviously a huge advantage to a school in terms of resourcing and having some sort of confidence that on this day at this time these doors will unlock. But you don't want that to unlock if it's a school closure day. You don't want that to unlock if actually it's a public holiday. You don't unlock if there's been some reason why normal procedure isn't going to be applied on that day. So using a feature like First Card Unlock, where you might have a schedule that says, right, all of these doors will open at this point in time, but only after a person with legitimate access for that time, for that area, has badged a card for the first time, is a really clever way of making sure that it's simple and easy for school access once the doors are open, but making sure that the door doesn't open automatically on a schedule just because the system says it should.
So in managing a centralised system, there were some benefits. Maybe you could describe a couple of those.
One of the key things that I found with the Command Centre platform from a centralised perspective, going out to multiple schools, and I say there are somewhere between 85 and 90 schools on that central platform now for South Australia. They don't all have the same operational processes. Yes, they have set school holidays, and those apply across the board, and obviously public holidays apply across the board. But if you're using, whether it's cardholder access schedules or access zone schedules intelligently, or you've got doors that are scheduled to open on a certain day, that works fine for those particular days. But there may be times when schools have dedicated school closure days. One of the advantages from a Command Centre perspective is you can have a default calendar that governs the set-in-stone aspects such as public holidays and school holidays, but each individual controller and each individual school can have its own individual calendar that allows it to control the days where it is opening and closing outside of those standard protocols and processes. So it gives them complete ownership and oversight over their own schedule, whilst not impacting or affecting the overall schedule. And if for some reason, because human error is human error, there's a problem with that and that has not been updated correctly by an individual site or an individual staff member, having that central oversight, the ability to check and double check before the school holidays commence or during the school holidays that actually there's nothing in the programming or the scheduling that would make these doors open at 7 o'clock in the morning on New Year's Day, which is probably a bad idea.
So George, thanks very much for that. I've learned a lot from talking to you, and hopefully people listening to the podcast will get something really good out of it too.
Thanks, Steve.
It was really interesting to hear how important it was for South Australian schools that security should not be in your face. The use of wireless escutcheon door control to make it look less like a security system, the desire to leave outdoor areas open to the community while having safety as a goal, with clear lockdown and protection designed into the system. A centralised security function across all the state schools to support the teams in each school, enabled by Gallagher Command Centre, delivers real benefits. The final case study is from Metcalfe County in Kentucky, in the United States, where I talked to Chris Hoffman.
My name's Chris Hoffman. I'm a retired school safety administrator in Metcalfe County, which is located in south central Kentucky, a small rural school district. When I retired, I was the Safe Schools coordinator, and I had been in that position for 16 years. It was something that when I took over, the school safety was just becoming a big item with all of the school violence and everything that was getting started and being more publicized. So I took over and worked through that. Then for the last 16 years, I've just been trying to upgrade it and put in ideas that I had and that some people that I was working with had, to try to do everything we could to make our schools as safe as we could make them in Metcalfe County.
Could you describe some of the upgrades you talked about, some of the things that you've implemented over that time?
Back when I took over, the popular thing for video cameras was your analog VHS, where basically you had like 30-some tapes, and every day you put in a new tape that corresponded with the day of the month, and you kept it on VHS for 30 days. And so when I took over, I knew that digital series was starting to get popular, so I had the thought of putting together a camera system and door locking system that all would integrate and work together. And I met a gentleman by the name of Cleve Carey that worked for a company that sold Gallagher equipment, and he said, I've got the perfect equipment to do what you're wanting to do. So we sat down and started looking at the buildings that we had at that time. I realized really quick that with Metcalfe County and us being a rural county and having a low tax base and not a whole lot of funds, this was a project I was going to have to do over a course of 5 to 6 years. We sat down and we talked with people from Gallagher and started talking about and looking at what we had, and we developed a plan that we could implement and put cameras and keyless door entry on all inside and outside doors over the course of 5 years, and then integrate everything together to come into one hub, one location where we could monitor everything, we could control everything and do everything. It took us a while to get to the point to where Metcalfe County Schools is at now, but through some grant money and some different things, it actually got expedited a little bit quicker. The reps at Gallagher was probably the key in this, because they came in and said, okay, this is how many doors you have, this is how many cameras you're going to need, so here's what we need to do. Rather than me just putting in equipment to serve 10 cameras, the long-term vision was to put in 120. So we put in initial equipment to do all of that, so we did not have to keep going back and upgrading that and costing us more at that time.
Right, so you really future-proofed the system. So with the cameras, what were the initial focus areas where you put cameras?
We started with the high school. We did a proposal to where we used the Milestone software, and we were able to use our analog cameras and convert them over to digital just to get on the software and get onto the program and get to where we could eventually hook the Gallagher system and integrate all of that. So doing that saved us a lot of money and allowed us to do a lot of the upfront cost earlier. And then as we would have a camera go bad or something like that, or if we had extra funds at the end of the year, then we would go back in and change some of those analog cameras out.
So from point of view of safety then for the school, what are the key areas of safety, like getting people on and off site, making sure that nothing comes into the school that you don't want in the school?
One thing that we did do is we invested in walk-through metal detectors for all of our buildings. So we reduced the number of entry points every morning to 2 per building, 1 for our car riders and 1 for our bus riders. So all of our kids and faculty and everybody walks through those walk-through metal detectors every morning, and then if the metal detector goes off, then they're kind of moved to the side and worked with an administrator and a teacher on a hand wand metal detector. And so that's the first step that we go through. Complete safety is hard to say, because I don't think you're ever 100% complete, but we have, to this point, something we did this year is we added the halos and tried to integrate those, and those are really, really nice. There is a
Chris, can I just interrupt for a moment? Would you be able to give me a description? So a lot of people listening to this probably won't know what a halo sensor is. So maybe if you could describe what it is and key things that's great from your point of view.
Well, a halo sensor, it looks like a smoke detector. If you go out to your local hardware store and you buy one of those smoke detectors, it's battery operated and you just mount it on your ceiling, that's kind of what the halo looks like. And it's designed to detect, I think it's 29 different things. A lot of those are air quality in terms of, bad air quality, carbon monoxide, things like that. It'll also detect vaping, smoke, those type of things. And then it's also designed, it has a safety feature that picks up key words, kill, any type of threatening. And then it picks up loud voices. For example, if you have 2 students that get into an argument and exchange loud voices.
Thanks, Chris. That sounds like that's a really, really powerful sensor. How easy was it to implement?
There is a learning curve with the halos that we had to work through, because anytime, just like any new technology product, they'll do a whole lot more than you probably know that what they'll do. So I think you have to do that. But with the halos, we have them in every classroom and all of our restrooms. And for the restrooms, they're mainly used for the use of vaping and smoking and those type of things. And so we use them on that pretense in those restrooms, and that's the heavy activity we have there. If it's air quality, it's going to send an email and a text message to the maintenance department and to the school administration. So it's going to alert those people that, hey, there's an air quality problem in room 125, which allows maintenance to start looking into that to see what the issue is and what's going on. So it allows us to be on top of it as soon as it's detected, and we can get that without any kid getting sick or having to shut down school for repair or anything of that nature. Now, on the safety side, it's a complete different group of people. So if you have a threat or loud voices or perceive that there's going to be a fight or something like that in a classroom or a restroom, it's going to alert the school administration, the school resource officers, and the school safety director that this is going on and allow them to get to where they need to be. If it detects gunshots, it's got a whole new situation. It's going to ensure, it works with the Gallagher system through the bridge, and it's going to ensure that all doors get locked. It's going to call 911 and get other police officers headed to the school. It's going to notify your school resource officers, your school administration, your school central office administration, and notify all those people that that's going on at that time. Pretty complicated system, and it takes a little while to learn and to get the right people notified, because it will send emails, it'll send text messages. You can communicate with them. The teacher in the classroom can ask it to call 911, and it will. So there's lots of features with this Halo system. This is our first year. To be honest, we're still learning a lot about it. Now with the halos in there, we've had a learning curve that teachers have had to change some of their terminology. When you talk about things in the ag class and you talk about slaughtering animals and those kind of things, you have to really work with your terminology.
So how are the staff with that? They've got a sensor in all their classrooms. Are they happy that the safety aspects of it are right up there and actually leading and keeping them as safe as possible and the students as safe as possible?
I think everybody's really happy. As I said, this is our first year, and we've had a learning curve, and we've learned a lot of things that the halos will do, and they actually work. We've had notifications sent of possible threats to the school administration. We've had notifications sent to our resource officers. We've had numerous notifications on student vaping in the restroom. It has helped tremendously with that. Sometimes you don't know you have a problem with something until you put something like this in, and actually there's a lot more of this going on than what we thought. So I think everybody really likes it.
Vaping seems to be a bit of a challenge in all sorts of parts of the world. How did the installation of the sensors that could detect vaping, how did that go down with the students and parents?
Of course, naturally the students that vape didn't like it at all. I don't think there's been a big issue with the parents. I think the school administration and the teachers and everybody are convinced that it's helping to cut down on vaping at school. One thing we did that I know some school districts around us did not do is we integrated the camera system, which I think is crucial. You need to install cameras right at those bathrooms, because if your vapes start going off in the restroom, and it's the restroom furthest away from the office, kids may be out of there before administration get there. So we integrated our camera system to when that vape starts going off, it signals that camera for it to automatically record for 10 minutes. And therefore we know who's leaving the restroom, who was in the restroom, and we can have conversations with those kids and work through that stuff. So that alleviates the situation of administrators having to run down the hallway and everybody thinking that there's something major going on, to try to catch people doing the vaping.
Safety-wise, the integrated systems that will initiate lockdowns when, say, an event is detected by the sensors. How about then how that works with the students and staff for making sure they all understand what they're meant to be doing at the time?
Well, that's a constant thing that schools battle, because most schools in Kentucky, they go over their emergency procedure plans and everything at the beginning of the school year. Then they'll come back after a major break and talk about it and go through it. But a lot of people still has the attitude that it will never happen here. We have certain sets of doors that kids understand and know that, hey, they're going to be unlocked for 90 seconds. So that if you're caught in that hallway and you can't get in your classroom, there's another door that, is locked. Now, the good thing is, in the state of Kentucky, they've taken the initiative that once the school day starts and kids are all getting in their classroom for the first time, all classroom doors are required to be locked all the time and closed. So, that's something that our state legislators did. It's a great safety feature.
Right, okay, so it's almost like the standard way of working is a semi-lockdown, and then at end of each class, teacher opens the doors, or do they open automatically?
Well, the teacher or students will open the door. You can egress out of the doors anytime you want to. You just can't enter. So when that bell rings, first kid to the door, he's going to automatically just open it and go through, and they'll change classes. And all of our teachers stand at the door during class change. So they're standing there and watching the hallway and watching their classroom and holding that door open. So, and then when that second bell rings and all their kids are in there, then that door's shut and they're locked in until time for that class to be over.
That's something new I've learned. Okay, is there anything else?
Well, I think the one thing that maybe we didn't discuss a little bit that for me sold me, I guess, when I had conversations with Gallagher, and because there's lots of software out there that will lock doors and that you can do different things, and I guess the one or two things that sold me, especially with Gallagher, was their card system they had. The identification cards that worked as your keys. To my knowledge, anything and everything can be scanned and can be copied, and you can take somebody's key card and do anything with it. But to my knowledge, I think Gallagher has done a really good job trying to prevent that from being able to occur, which has made that systems. I know your key fob systems can easily be copied. So I think when I started looking at everything and I talked with Gallagher and I met with Cleve and we sat down with those representatives from Gallagher, the ability for Gallagher to take its software and integrate it to Milestone and with the computers and to do things was really crucial, because at any point in time, our administrators, they can look on their computer and know what's going on. They can look at any camera in their building. They can look at any door in their building and know if it's locked, if it's unlocked. They can go back and see who goes in that door and out of that door. I received notifications on my phone if anybody past 10 o'clock at night, once the custodians left and once they finished cleaning the building and locked it up and secured it for the night, anybody that went in there after 10 o'clock at night, I would receive a notification on my phone, hey, this door was opened by such and such person. It allowed me to be able to maybe say to that person, okay, why are you here at 10 o'clock at night? Or go back and look at the cameras and see what was going on. Somebody get their key card and do something. So the integrative part and the ability for us to control and to know what's going on in our buildings was the biggest selling point for me in terms of the Gallagher system and everything that it would do. And not to mention that their warranty on all their products is excellent. For a small school district, that means a lot of money that I'm not going to have to spend in future years.
In talking with other schools, having money to do these things is always one of the bigger challenges, I guess.
You are correct, it is, and I talk to school districts all over the state of Kentucky, and I'm like, look, you can get a cheaper system, there's no doubt about it, but you can't get a quality system that's going to match what you need to do. And if you will work with Gallagher and work with Inspired Technologies, the company that helped us do a lot of this, you're going to build up to what you want. You don't have to do it all at once. That was the part that I really liked about Gallagher's team when they came in and started showing me their products. And I looked at them and said, I can't afford that. And they said, well, here's how we can. Tell me what you want. And then it took about 4.5 years for me to get the system to where it's at right now.
Yeah, and I guess the thing is you can feel like you've done everything possible, and you should be able to sleep well at night.
That's your goal, is to do everything that you possibly can. Here in Kentucky, with the help of our Center for Safe Schools and our Department of Education, I would tell anybody to come look at the laws and the procedures for school safety that the state of Kentucky has put in.
Thanks very much, Chris. It's been great talking to you. I've learned a lot.
You're welcome.
All three case studies mention the fact that there are challenges in getting budget to complete security upgrades in schools, but it is clear that the security and safety benefits are huge. Metcalfe District showed that the long-term focus to get the base infrastructure for the security system right initially, then transition the components across based on priority was the most efficient way to manage the available budget and ensure a great result. Over time, the advancements in video technology such as cameras with multiple sensors can reduce the upgrade cost. From my experience, Metcalfe are definite leaders with the addition of halo sensors in all the restrooms and classrooms. These sensors have multiple technologies for detecting environmental gases and sound, and definitely represent a step change in detecting disturbances. I'm impressed that the Kentucky state government played an active part in setting standards for school safety. I hope you've all learned a lot from these 3 case studies. Keep an eye out for the next Tech Talk podcast coming soon that will talk you through the updated and new features in Command Center version 890.